Hi guys, Samantha from Jessama Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create a pair of earrings that matches this pendant over here. So the technique that I'm going to be showing you today is how to create a hollow pendant like this. You can see it's flat on the back, but it's also got this dome, and actually there's air in the middle, so I'll show you how to do that. I'm also going to show you how to use a silk screen and then use alcohol ink pens to colour in that silk screen. Now, before we actually start the tutorial, bear in mind that if you do not have alcohol ink pens, you can always replace it with mica powder or eyeshadow or pastel. I have shown in this tutorial, which I'll link in the description below, how to use mica powders to colour in a stamped image. You can basically replace the stamp with the silk screen and replace the alcohol inks with the mica powder. So if you want to create this effect but don't have the pens, just go check out this tutorial. So the pens that I'm going to be using today, I just want to show you ahead of time, are Vivid Green, and this is the 46, and these are little tipsy markers, and I'll try to put a link in the description to where I bought them. I have the 48, 35, 23, and finally number 1. And those are the colours that I'm going to be using. Again, you can use your own colours if you happen to have other pens. And now, keep in mind, it always has to be alcohol ink pens. You cannot replace this with just general felt pens. It has to be alcohol ink because some felt pens, a lot of them react with the polymer clay, so you do not want to be just using any random pen. It has to be an alcohol ink based pen. Now, you could try using alcohol ink with a very small brush, but that takes a lot of patience and you can end up making mistakes, so I generally would not recommend that, but you can give it a try if you want to. Now what I've got here is a piece of white primer that I've rolled out to about 2mm thick, and I'm just burnishing it with between two pieces of plain printing paper to get it to have a nice smooth texture. Okay. Then I'm going to trim away my excess. So, and then this can just go, the excess can just go back into your white packet to be used at a later date. Alrighty, and there we go. And now the silk screen that I'm going to be using is one from Tonya's Treasures, and you can see here that I have used it before, and I really quite like the silk screen. But any silk screen where it basically outlines something that you can colour in. So orange parts are the parts that you would want to colour in for the most part. Some silk screens won't work with this, but this is one that will work quite well. And there are a lot of ones out there that will work. So just go have a look through your silk screen stash if you have some, and just see which one will work for you. Okay. And I've just gently burnished that on circular. Now I'm going to bring over some black paint, give it a quick shake. Open it up, and then I'm going to just pop a line of it over here and over here in the middle. Okay, just because it's quite a lot of screen that we have to cover. Then I'm just going to take the swipe and I'm going to brush that over, and then I'm just going to go back over again until I just get that one little area there. Okay, now that's completely covered. I'm going to lift my screen. I can just grab a piece. There we go. Now the edges, you can see are a bit blurred out. That's fine. It's the main in the middle part that you want. Okay, put that to the side to dry, and this needs to get rinsed out in some nice warm water. Okay, and here it is. Now that I have allowed it to dry, which takes about a minute or two. Okay, so I'm just going to twist it around to make sure that all of that paint is dry, because if there are any shiny spots, it is not completely dry. And it looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to very gently burnish that. just to flatten out any raised areas, because I don't really want raised areas. Okay. And that would also get rid of any excess paint that might be on there, if there is any. Alright, and now I am going to transfer this to a tile, because I don't want it sitting on the paper for the whole time we're going to be doing this, because it is a fairly lengthy process. It's very relaxing, but again, it's going to be sitting on here for probably around 10 to 20 minutes at least, and that is going to be leaching our clay, and I want it to be nice and flexible. So transfer it to a tile that is separate from your work tile, because you want to be able to twist it around as you're colouring. If you can't move it freely, it's going to be very difficult for you to colour your piece. Okay, so now if you have a look at this one, which is the exact same silkscreen, you can see that I've coloured all of the little leaves, but I've left the outside areas white, and that is my choice. However, you can colour however much you want, so if you want to colour in the white areas, feel free to do so. You do not have to follow my tutorial exactly. You can if you want, but if you want to try your own thing, feel free to do that as well. Alright, so let's get started. So I'm actually going to start right in the middle here with this piece. And now when you're working with alcohol ink pens on the raw clay, more often than not it's going to be a little bit on the clay is soft, so it's going to mark the clay, and that actually creates a very interesting effect, and I'll show you that in a moment. Because as you're stippling in your coloured area, you will find that first off, the ink doesn't place down evenly. It creates this kind of spotted effect, and it also will mark the clay slightly, which is fine because we will burnish it a little later on to flatten it out. But what you get is, if you have a look here, I'm not sure how easily you can see that. Sorry if the camera's not in focus, but if you have a look here, this is a very good example. You can see how it kind of has that mottled pattern rather than a very smooth skinner blend, which is something that I really like with the alcohol ink pens. If you wanted to colour it after it was baked, you would just you would skip this process entirely, create the piece, bake it, and then come back and colour it. However, I prefer to do this while it is raw. Especially if I do happen to mess up, it means that although I will have created some waste clay, it's not going to be baked. Okay, so I've gone in with the lighter green. This is the 48, and this one over here is the 46. And so now what you do is, now that you've got the two colours, you want to start running the lighter one over the join line between the two colours, so that you create this kind of mottled blended effect. Okay, and you may need to just wipe off your pen every once in a while just to get rid of any clay residue that happens to be sitting on it, because that will happen. And so basically what you'll do is you'll just continue colouring in your pieces. It doesn't have to, so for instance this type of leaf, I have another one. Oh gosh, I have another one over here, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the same colour. I just do it randomly as I go through. Have fun, play around with the different colours, and I'll show you again once it's starting to shape up. And here it is all finished. So you can see how beautiful it is. Now I just want to bring this over because this is the exact same colours of ink, exact same stamp and everything. And you can see how the colours have lightened slightly once it is baked. That is something that you do need to keep in mind when working with alcohol inks. Whatever you have on the raw clay is going to fade a touch when you put it into the oven. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so now I'm going to bring over our cutters. And I'm going to be using this fan cutter. You can see it's quite a nice one. And it comes in a set with a bunch of other little fan cutters. So you can see those. And then I'm also going to be using my largest mini circle, which sits quite nicely with it. Okay, so I'm just going to lift this up off of my tile. And we can put that to the side because I'm not going to be using that at the moment. I'm going to bring over my piece of paper and we're going to give this a burnish again. And this is just to flatten out any divots that the pens may have made, also to get rid of any excess alcohol ink. I'm going to lift that up gently, and you can see there how it catches excess ink. Now before you burnish, you want to let it sit for a minute or two before you burnish, because the paint can actually absorb a fair amount of the alcohol ink and can actually be quite sticky. So if you do not give it enough time, generally a minute or two, before you burnish, you might find that the paint actually sticks to the paper. So just keep that in mind as well. Okay, so now I want to see how much space I need for each piece. And I'm wondering if I even want to create a hollow piece because it looks so nice as it is flat. You know, let's go with flat pieces. I'm pretty sure I have a tutorial on YouTube that already teaches you how to create a hollow piece. I'll link to that. Okay, and then this means that we can get out a fair number more earrings. And since we're not actually doing a hollow piece, before I cut this, let's put a backing on it, because we might as well only do one cut. So I'm just going to flip that over, and I have a piece of black here that has been run out to about 2mm thick. Just going to pop that over, like so. And then again, we're going to burnish just to make sure that it's stuck down nicely, no air bubbles. And there might be one or two air bubbles, so I will have a look again by flipping it over to see if I can find air bubbles. And there is one over there, you can see. So then you just take your blade, cut in, and you smooth it over, like so. Okay, and that was only air bubble I can see. Right, so now I want you to burnish this thoroughly because it needs to be stuck pretty well to the piece of paper, the back anyway, because we're not going to be texturing it, and I don't want to do a huge amount of sanding, so by giving it the paper's texture it will give it a nice matte finish. So I'll flip and burnish on this side as well. Also, the more stuck it is to the paper, the less likely the clay will stick in our cutters, because the paper is a non-stick surface, so the more you burnish, the more stuck the clay will be, and then we won't have as much trouble with the cutters because of being on a paper surface. If it was on a tile, it would not stick. Okay, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to cut, and then you want to just make sure that you press around those edges nicely, and lift. There we go, did not stick, which is very nice. Okay, and I want another one. Press. Make sure you press around the edges just to get a nice clean cut. and lift. Okay. Then I'm going to swap to a different cutter. Let's use this one. Okay, and I'm just making sure that will fit. Okay. Cut. And lift, and that one did stick in the cutter. Now what I like to do is, if it did get stuck in the cutter, I tend to just run my fingers around the edges just to get rid of any little bits and pieces that might be on the edge. And then either you can press on it very lightly, like so, to get it out, or what I do is I'll cut my lips over this and below, and that way I don't get any fingerprints and it will come out quite nicely. Okay, so there's one. Let's see if we can get another one in here. And making sure that I get a nice clean cut and lift. And this one also stuck, but it didn't stick completely, so we can lift that out. That to the side. Now I also might as well just get these ones out as well. Okay. Then I'm going to grab my little mini circle and I want to try to get up 4. And this one will definitely stick. So I'm going to blow. Okay, and there you can see it creates a little burst there. And just gently press your fingers around the edges. Another one, and I'll just continue until I've got 4 little circles. Okay, now I'm just gonna pop these pieces to the side quickly, and we can take care of those in a second. Right now I want to see how much of the black clay I can get back. So try peeling off this white. Not all of it's going to come off because we did burnish it on there pretty well. But you should be able to get a decent amount of your black back. Okay. So I'll put that back with the black, and this is of course our waist. So that's fine, it's not too much. Right, so I'm going to bring over another little piece of paper and I'm going to put these all down onto it. Okay, and with each of these just run your finger around the sides to get rid of any little rim that there might be. There's going to be very little sanding to be done. And repeat with all of them, and then when they're done I want you to put them into the oven for a full hour at pretty much recommended temperature. If you're using a different brand, bake it for an hour at that brand's recommended temperature, and then when they're done we can move on to stringing them. Well, not stringing. First we would need to just give them a very light sand. Then we want to either put some resin on them or some or other sealant, and then we can assemble them. Okay, and here we go. So now I would like to sand the sides and possibly the back just a touch, because if I direct this a bit you can see there are some shiny spots from maybe some stray mica powder particles. Also the sides have just a little bit of a grain to them that was left by the cutter that needs to be sanded out. The front you do not want to sand because you will end up removing the surface effect, so do not sand the front, just the sides and the back of your pieces. And I would do that with all of them. And it's a very quick sand. We're not going to be sanding it up to a high shine. I'm going to just be using a 400 grit sanding paper, so let me just bring that over. So I've just got it wet. There we go. And all you need to do is just sand the side like so, as quick as that. And just repeat that for all of them, where you just sand the sides, removing that little cliff edge. Very quick. Now generally I will do this by the sink, it makes it easier to keep my sandpaper wet. And yeah, I will just continue doing this with all of them. You just sand up the edges, and then you also will go and just sand the backs very lightly, like so, just to remove any clipped edges. And this will leave you with a matte finish. Okay, so here they are. Now I want to just quickly clean up these backs because they have a very matte kind of scratched look to them. And the best way to fix that is to just pop a little bit of wax on the back. Now I do apologise for my cat in the background. She's in a frisky mood and she doesn't really like it when I record and can't pay full attention to her, so I do apologise for her running about in the background. She's trying to get my attention. So now you'll rub it on like that, and then you can see how it has now still a somewhat matte finish, but it gets rid of the scratches. Repeat with. Okay, and so now we are ready to resin. So I'm just going to bring over my resin brush and a silicone mat, and we're going to start with these one at a time. And I'm using this UV resin. It's not a doming resin, it will just give it a light sheen. Well, not a sheen, a glossy shine, not a light sheen. Gives a lot more than that. But I'm not trying to get a domed surface, I just want a glass-like finish to it. So just proceed to cover the surface with that resin. Repeat with the others, then pop that into the UV light for about 15 minutes. Yeah, and then we can assemble. Now the reason I put it into the UV light for 15 minutes is just to make sure that it is properly cured. You don't want it to be sticky when we start working with it. I generally leave it in the UV light for 15 minutes and then actually will leave it for another 10 minutes outside of the UV light just to let it cure completely so that it is no longer sticky. And I find that generally applies to most UV brands, UV resin brands anyway. Okay, so I'll just continue and then I'll show you what they look like once they're out of the UV light. Okay, so here it is out of the UV light, and I've let them sit for about 15 minutes just to make sure that the resin is no longer sticky to the touch, and so that it has a nice smooth surface. Okay, so I'm going to just put most of these to the side and we're going to start by drilling. So I've got a pin drill here, and you'll find the center of your fan like so, and always drill resin side first. If you drill from the back up into the resin side, you'll find that the resin disc actually lifts up off of the clay, which is something that you really don't want. So always drill resin side first. Okay, and then I'll just come back through and drill this side. Alright. Then you would repeat with the other fans. Then, excuse me. Let's see, I think I want to match that one up with this one. So again, drilling from the resin side, you would drill one hole at the bottom of your piece like so, and then you would match up a hole at the top. And then just repeat with all of them, and then after that we can proceed to assemble our earrings. Okay, so now we're ready to assemble them. So I've already assembled the other three and there's just this one left. So just going to take our jump ring, open up a nice large gap which will make us this easier to do. There we go. And close that up, spin it around, and actually it needs to be closed up a bit more. There we go. Okay, then you bring over another jump ring, up, pop that into the last hole, pop your jump ring, your wire on and close, and there we go, very simple. So let me just bring over all of them very quickly. So here's that one and the piece that goes with it, and here is the other very similar shape fan but different enough that it looks really nice. And yeah, that is basically it for the tutorial. So let me just bring you in a bit so you can see these. There you go. And so basically that's it for this tutorial. Keep in mind that again, if you don't have a silkscreen, you can always just take a texture stamp, ink it up with some StazOn black ink, stamp that onto the white clay, and then you could colour in with alcohol inks. Also, on the same note, you can replace the alcohol ink pens with mica powder or pastel. That will also work. Have a look in the description below to see how to create a puffed pendant like this one here. So that's another way to use this technique that I have shown here. And so yeah, have some fun, play around with it. There are a bunch of different ways you can do this. There are a bunch of different colours that you can play around with as well. I went with a kind of just transitioning into autumn sort of colour scheme where we have the oranges with a fair amount of green still, but we do have a little bit of reds and dark oranges, which is something that I quite like. But bear in mind, you can do all sorts of colours. You don't have to necessarily even go with the forest theme. Any silkscreen or texture stamp will do, so long as you can colour in the gaps. So have a look through your collection, see what you have, and mess around and have fun with it. And if you would like to support this channel so that I can continue doing videos like this one every single week, please do consider becoming a patron. I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. You get exclusive videos on there every single month. Depending on what tier you're on, you can get up to 3 project tutorials every single month. So check that out. Those project tutorials are sometimes available to purchase on Etsy, but in general they are only available on Patreon. So do check that out. And if you want to have a look at the cutters that I used in this tutorial, I also supply those on my Etsy shop, so I'll have a link to that in the description below. And as always, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.